As part of Wild Eye, artist Emma Smith has worked really closely with local people to develop a new series of artworks for the Cinder Track. And the Cinder Track is an ex-railway line that ran between Scarborough and Whitby and is now a really popular cycle path and footpath, but also a really important green corridor for wildlife. So Emma's created a series of artworks, some of which are resting spaces for multiple species, humans and others, to really invite people to slow down and take some time in nature. We know that being in nature is really good for our health and well-being, but also that the more time we spend in nature, the more likely we are to fight to protect it.
So the project is called Old Friends, which is a term that's used to describe the bits of the human which are not human, and all the other bits that we are. More than 50% of it is not human cell and is bacteria, virus, other living beings that form part of the human ecosystem. And so all of the microbiome and aerobiome that comes off of the natural world around us is really good for our health. The idea with this work is to have a space for people to sit within the tree canopy, which is the bit of the green space around us which is the most beneficial to human health. So for years there's been research and understanding into the importance of green spaces to health, and that's resulted in parks and grassy spaces within urban design. But actually the microbiome, the aerobiome that comes off of grass dissipates as it rises. So being able to sit within trees and have the plants kind of around you is really, really great for human health. So this was a space for people to be able to sit within the tree space, but also where we can celebrate and think about the whole cycle of the trees in terms of their benefit to nature. So the idea of these works is for people to be able to sit, but also to think about deadwood and the importance of that. So in this sculpture there are a number of holes where people are invited to find windfalls or sticks that are already fallen to the ground and add them into the sculpture to create your own little nest to sit in. So at the beginning of the project we ran BioBlitz along the track looking at what species use this as a commuter route. So this is obviously a space that people use, but there's a huge amount of nature that uses this to commute and to live. And one of the things that came up in the BioBlitz was this amazing kind of accidental architecture that gets produced by the railway line tunnel. So in the cracks in the mortar you get these holes that snails and other creatures will use as dwell spaces. And so the idea of this work was really to think about accidental architectures, different spaces that creatures might accommodate and use, but also huddled spaces where we might come together collectively in sort of tight spaces to get together in nature. And then there are a series of holes or spaces within the stone that have been carved, which are sort of snail huddle holes, but on the far side the natural fossil of the stone has been kept because it has this real intricacy to the stonework, which allows for lots of really sort of minutiae spaces and gaps for different insects to get in and inhabit. And then a big part of the project was thinking about that hands-on contact with nature and with the soil and the benefits of that to health and our willingness to fight for nature justice. And so as part of the project we ran Dorodango workshops with Lou Cook, and looking at different ways that we make with the soil and the earth and can have contact with that. And so these are some of the Dorodango that we've made during those workshops. It's basically a process of using the soil from where you are to make earth balls. These ones have been embedded with a special seed mix which comes from plants, wildflowers from along the track. And so the idea of these is we've created both a workshop activity for people to get hands-on with the soil, but also a resource that then has been planted to enhance that natural fauna in this bit of the track. And that's been both embedded in this area around this work, but also has been made available for free for anyone who wants to pick up a set to grow their own Cinder Track flowers from home. So most of the sculptures are made of a fossil stone, which is a Swaledale fossil, and we spent some time looking at different options for stone with a real wish to find something that had a fossil content, because we're very close to the coastline here. And so this stone has this sort of amazing cross-section where you can see all the different fossils, but that you can polish up to become very smooth, but also then what I think kind of looks like almost like the sort of weird filings or something. It's such an extraordinary fossil content that's in this stone. So we're on the viaduct over Scalby Beck, which is quite an amazing ravine running underneath us, which you can't really see if you're just coming or walking along or cycling along this route, because the walls are above head height. And so the idea was to create a link from this route down into the beck and to think about the amazing wildlife that are in that space. So we've got two plaques, one at this end which says here and another one down the far end which says tell, and the idea is to be able to listen to the birds this end and then tell your bees your secrets the other end, and that's based on an old folklore around the history and tradition of whispering your secrets to the bees. As part of that work, we've then enhanced the natural environment in the beck for those species. So we've put in boxes specifically for marsh tit, which is an endangered species on the red list, who would like to support and who particularly like the environment of the beck, and also bee boxes to support our lovely bee population that we might tell our secrets to. So each of the works links as well to a different bit of the history of the Cinder Track as a railway line. And so here was a really moment to sort of think about the ground being connected down low and the surface of this railway line originally being made of cinder. And so there's that part of the geology to the site, and then there's also all of the fossils and older archaeology that are connected to the ground in this area and by the coast. And so the idea in this space was to create a series of forms that reference and are inspired by that geology, and that are a space as a sort of sitting circle for kids to be able to come and use this woodland area for their making. So one of the workshop activities we did during the process of making this work was to think about what materials are around you that you can forage sustainably and make from as an art resource. And that included making our own paints, thinking about different dyes that we can get from different plants, and then using sticks and leaves and windfall to be able to build structures. And so this is a kind of making space for the kids to be able to use that wildlife that's on their doorstep. So this work was inspired by fields that are further along the track out of Scarborough, where the farmers in the fields stack the bales that look like people and armchairs in the landscape, and it's this really nice natural kind of living space within the fields. And when we worked with groups locally to walk and explore this area and think about what this work might be, there was a real interest in having a space on Gallows Fields for people to be able to picnic, to spend time, to really use this space more as a space for families to be able to come and enjoy this green space. There's also a lot of plants around that are forageable and edible, so there's plum trees, there's apple trees, there's gooseberries, raspberries that have escaped from someone's garden at some point and wilded. They're fruits for people to be able to eat in this area, and then we've also agreed that this grass area around this work will also be wilded to produce forage space for pollinators as well, so this becomes a space for feeding everybody. So the idea here is to sort of enhance that moment of coming from Scarborough, from the urban space onto the Cinder Track and into the rural environment, and so we've worked with groups along the track to think about what the plants are that would naturalise the area but that would have a really strong fragrance that would create that sense of aroma as you're coming onto the track, just so that psychologically there's that shift of coming into a natural space. So these plants have all been planted in collaboration with Gladstone Road Primary School and Grow Scarborough, so all the kids came out and we've planted them in. And then hopefully this space just becomes a space that can just wild, but that is a space the school will also be taken care of, but as a sort of really lovely planted area just to give that sense of that shift of perception as people come onto the track.